This video is brought to you by Osmocote, the planter's plant food.
I'm Amy Grisak. I'm a garden writer in Great Falls, Montana. And today I'm going to show you some of the things that you can leave in the garden over the winter and what you're going to need to take out. One of the first things I'm going to take out are my tomato plants once we get a heavy freeze. Right now they're chugging right along just fine, producing a tremendous amount really, but anytime now we can have something that's going to shut down the garden for good. So even though these tomatoes have produced well throughout the season, the leaves have been kind of funky. Did that since these are Manna oranges that I started from seed, and it's been like that from the beginning. Don't know exactly what's going on, don't want to take a chance, so I'm not even going to compost these plants. They're going to go in the trash. So that's one thing that can be taken out completely and cleaned up. But there's a lot of things that you're really going to want to look at leaving to benefit not only your soil, but also the wildlife, which you can hear on the side. This last weekend I was actually able to finally get out in the garden and get a lot of the weeds under control that have gotten away from me at the end of the summer. And I started cleaning up a few things. But one of the ones that I always like to leave are the Echinacea. Even though the blooms are pretty much spent, we have just a little bit hanging on here. These seed heads are really nice to have in the garden. And it's a really neat barometer. We are notorious for wind around here, but it's really, really cool when we do get a light snow that sticks around and you'll get inches on top of these seed heads. So even though it doesn't add a lot of organic, it's not a horticultural reason really to leave this in the garden. It's more of an aesthetic reason, and that's something you need to consider when you're cleaning up. You don't want a bare naked garden. It's not very interesting in the wintertime. So think about things like these that you want to leave, that birds can perch on, snow can sit on, and you can just enjoy even when it's covered in white fluff. Now in my garden cleanup this weekend, I took out a lot of the spent sunflowers. I was really amazed this year. The birds really came in and nailed them. We had a tremendous amount of sunflowers, but they picked a lot of them clean. So a lot of those I did take out because I want to bury them in my new hugelkultur bed. But these that still have some seeds coming on, I'm going to leave them because there's nothing we like better than sitting at our kitchen table, looking outside and watching the birds and trying to identify the different species working on the sunflower heads. So this is a really good thing to leave in your garden throughout the winter or as long as you can. Now while I was cleaning up too, another thing I came across is this clover that really took hold and took off this year. And actually I started ripping it up just because it was something I didn't plant, but then I thought I need to leave it. You really need to think about leaving some of the weeds, such as clover, because they are sending those roots down. They're going down deep, pulling nutrients and minerals up that the plants could use, plus they're going to hold the soil in place. The one thing you really don't want to do and have by the end of the season is just a big slate of bare soil. It just exposes itself, it zaps nutrients, and it can really do a lot of damage if you get a good wind that can take a lot of it away. So you might want to think about leaving some of the weeds. If they're not going to seed and they're not some noxious thing like bindweed, leave it in place. This will die back this winter, and I can sure chop it up next spring and turn it into the soil and add even more to it. And finally, this is one of the newest beds that I put in this year. It's my absolute worst bed for wind erosion. It seems like no matter what I'd put in here over the years, it would just be scoured clean. So I am doing herbs in this bed this year. So this year I put in dill and fennel and parsley and basil, but I also put in perennials such as spearmint and horehound and yarrow and the perovskia, the Russian sage. But when my annuals die back, when the parsley gets hit and is black and yucky, same with the basil and everything else, I'm leaving it. I will not touch it until spring because anytime I can have roots in the soil, that's going to help hold it in place. So these are just a few of the things that when it does die, you can just leave it, and the other perennials will just sit there through the winter, be great, hold in the soil, and be ready to go next spring.